That's why your arms wider. My guilt is great. Your love is greater still. Your love was greater still.
Jesus, we lay it all at your feet this morning. You are so good. So good to us. We just praise your name. And we love you. We thank you for everything that you've done for us. Lord, you bore all of that sin, all of our sin on the cross. That you conquered it. You defeated death so that we may live with you and be a part of your family. It is so good. It's in your holy name we pray. Amen. Amen. You all can take a seat.
Good morning. How are you guys doing today, EagleNaz fam? I'm not saying I have a favorite service, but it's second. Way more vocal. I have a small public service announcement for some of you guys who don't know me. My name is Giuseppe Gatto. I'm the youth church pastor here at EagleNaz. This is my third time in front of you guys. So by now, you should know the drill. You're going to know that I'm looking for some interaction. I'm looking for some words to be said that are completely okay because we're in church. I have a list of them right here. You could say any of these as loud as you want. No one can look at you funny. No one can tell you to be quiet. So what I would do if I were you, I'd pick my top 3. And just cycle through those as much as you possibly can. So I'll give you a few seconds. Go ahead and take a look at them. There's some good ones up there. There's some that aren't even on there. So feel free to get creative with it. All right, now that you've picked your favorite, let's see if we can put them to use. I got to know something. Have you guys ever had that moment? The one where you ask yourself, who, what, how, why am I here? How did I think this was a good decision? For some of you middle school and high school students, this is a little bit of a daily occurrence for you. And at that point, it's typically when your parents go, who, how, what, why are you here? For Jody, that was our honeymoon. Oh yeah. Now, you see, Jody and I, when we got married, we were like poor, okay? Every dollar we had went to our honeymoon, all right? Like, when I say poor, I mean like ramen and bagel bites poor, just the delicacies of old. So when we got married, we asked for experiences on our honeymoon that we couldn't afford. One of those was swimming with sharks. Now, context, as a kid, I wanted to be a marine biologist. I loved it. I thought sharks were so cool, terrifying, but so cool. So the idea that someone got us swimming with sharks on the boat ride out, I was vibrating with excitement. Why are we going so far into the ocean? Do sharks not come to shore? Can we just drop right here? I am so, I was over the moon. Now we get to the location. Jody, little nervous. Me, also a little nervous, but really excited. And then the captain gets on the radio and he starts saying things, telling us about possible situations, scenarios we may encounter. And so he says, all right, so when you jump in the water and you swim out to the cage, make sure you don't move your feet that much because sharks are attracted to churning water. But it's totally fine. We've never lost anyone. People are losing it. Then he goes, also, some of the sharks are small enough that they can fit through the bars. If that happens, just bop it on the nose. It'll turn around and swim out. We've never lost anyone, but we've lost some fingers. I don't know if it was everyone's first encounter with the sarcasm. I know it wasn't mine. It certainly wasn't Jody's. But people, the looks on faces, just regret. Are refunds possible in the, he wants us to jump in the water? I am horse laughing in the back. Bent, doubled over. I cannot stop. It was absolutely priceless, and I wish you all could have been there, mostly because it was super fun swimming with the sharks. Now, I don't know if you've been in that situation, but I do know the disciples absolutely were, and we're going to read about it. So grab your Bible, open your favorite Bible app to Mark chapter 4. We're going to start in verse 35. Now, in Mark chapter 4, Jesus has just finished teaching through parables. Then that evening, he said something that without fail made every disciple's eyebrow raise, and maybe a little more. Verse 35. On that day, when evening had come, he said to them, "Let us go across to the other side." Full stop. Now, as you've learned, I'm a little bit of a sarcastic kind of guy, which is a real big surprise for some of you, I know. But when Jesus says things that come off ridiculous, I wonder if just a little teeny bit of a sarcastic tone is used in those situations. Like when were people looking at him and like, are you for real? Like, I can't tell if you're being serious or not, Jesus. This would have been that moment. Because on the other side of the Galilee is a place called the Decapolis. And in the Decapolis, pagans live there. If you were a good Jewish boy or girl, you wouldn't be caught dead on that side of the Galilee. This part of the world is so un-Jewish that in later rabbinical tradition, just to utter the word Decapolis made you unclean for 7 days. This is Batman Joker hate part of the world. So just imagine the reaction of the disciples when Jesus says, that's the destination. Shock, awe, why, huh? And maybe more. Verse 36, and leaving the crowd, they took him with them in the boat just as he was, and other boats were with him just as he was. Hos I me. It's a strange phrasing, right? Just as he was. I thought so too. So I started studying this phrase. And in my studies, I learned that this phrase doesn't translate super well into the English, and that some scholars believe that this phrasing seems to insinuate that there was an argument. It's possible that in verse 35, Jesus, as their rabbi, says, hey guys, let's jump in the boat. We're going over there. And the disciples flat out said, nah, that's not for me. It's possible that Hos I me is more along the lines of get in the boat now. Because one thing you don't do as a disciple, as a first century disciple, as a first century Talmudim, is argue with your rabbi. Honestly, there's a lot of levels to this for the disciples. And I can imagine the disciples now like, wait. Not only are you forcing us to go to the Decapolis, but you're making us go across the sea? Across the Galilee? To there? Are you nuts? Now, culturally, first century Jews, they don't do deep water. Deep water is the abyss. Deep water is the Tehom. That's the chaos waters. Yeah, they would fish, but they're fishing like 100 feet from the shore. They're not going to that deep water and like, no, sir, we walkers here. That's what we like to do. And I could see the disciples now, Rabbi, if you're going to make us go there, at least let us walk like, this is the worst. Now, the image for this is much better when you realize that the disciples aren't 30-year-olds. They're teenagers throwing a fit. I don't want to go, man. Why? Do we have to? Yeah, I know some of you. I've been some of y'all's youth pastors for like 7 years or 5 years. I know you. Stubbornly throwing a fit. Some of you parents, you won't even have to use your imagination. You can just see Peter right now. You just see all of them. Like, I know that. But let's keep reading, because in verse 37, when we start here, they're on the boat. They've made it to the boat, and something breaks out on the boat in the middle of the Galilee. And a great storm, verse 37, arose, and the waves were breaking into the boat so that the boat was already filling. And he, being Jesus, was in the stern, asleep on the cushion. And they woke him and said, "Teacher, do you not care that we are perishing?" I really hope perishing was the word they used. Never in my life have I heard a teenager say perishing. Can you imagine these teenagers right now? These disciples in the storm? First off, they've already had their moment. And now, like, everything's coming in around them, and they're like, of course the storm would break out. We're only sailing over the literal gateway to the underworld. This is the life I live. It's exactly what I feel like every time I hit 6 red lights in a row. This is my luck. Now, the hard part for this in 2024 is I don't think we appreciate the boat. You see, when I read this as a high school or a college student, I'm thinking cargo ship, right? Cargo ships are the honey badgers of the boat world. They don't care. Honey badger doesn't care about the waves. They're just slicing right through those waves. Or, like I would imagine, who here has ever seen World's Deadliest Catch? Anyone? Way more than First Service. First Service does not like that show. But in the World's Deadliest Catch, you got guys who are like, it's just a Tuesday. I'm out here like catching crabs. How'd you sleep last night, Bob? It was great. Like waves everywhere. You're just like, this is a brazen crew. Maybe they're the honey badgers of the world. But in reality, the boat would have looked more like this. It would have been roughly 20 feet long. It would have dipped in the middle to make it easier to pull your nets up out of the water, meaning it was close to the water. Waves crashing all around. You're in the middle of the Galilee, the Tehom underneath you. And where's Jesus? Well, he's at the stern. Now, for me as a little ghetto kid, boats weren't super popular in inner city Philadelphia. So like starboard port, stern, whatever the opposite of the stern is. Those were not terms I was familiar with. So when I read this story and I imagine it in my brain, I think, oh, Jesus is at the front. Because that's where everyone wants to sit. It's the most fun spot to sit. The back never doesn't go up and slam down. No, you want to be where the fun is. But I realize the stern, that's the back of the boat. That's where you steer. So, not only are the disciples going to the Decapolis, not only are they not walking, and they're sailing in a storm. It's not looking too good. And where's Jesus? Jesus is asleep when he's supposed to be steering this thing. What? What is this life? What is happening right now? I mean, Jesus, respect the sleep game, but honestly, this is a strange situation to be catching the Z's, my guy. Well, strange if it's happenstance. Maybe less strange when you realize Jesus is a rabbi. And how do rabbis teach? They point. They take their disciples somewhere, they show them something, and they teach about it. So you have a group of Jews going over deep water to a place they don't want to go, and a storm breaks out. Well, doesn't this sound familiar? Why is this life that I live have such strong Jonah vibes right now? Which should give us an idea of what is to come. Verse 39, and he, Jesus, awoke and rebuked the wind and said to the sea, peace, be still. And the wind ceased, and there was a great calm. He said to them, why are you so afraid? Have you still no faith? And they were filled with great fear and said to one another, who then is this, that even the wind and the sea obey him? Siopao famoo. Now peace is a little bit of a strange translation for me. When I think of siopao and I read it and I look through the scriptures, it's more of a quiet, a hush, be still. But Jesus, he wouldn't have said this in Greek. He would have said this in Hebrew, in Aramaic. And he's also a rabbi. And remember, everything is a lesson. Everything points to the text, which is why some believe that this is a callback not just to Jonah, but to Psalm 107. Some went to the sea in ships, doing business on the great waters. They saw the deeds of the Lord, his wondrous works in the deep. For he commanded and raised the stormy wind, which lifted up the waves of the sea. They mounted up to heaven. They went down to the depths. Their courage melted away in their evil plight. They reeled and staggered like drunken men and were at their wits' end. Then they cried to the Lord in their trouble, and he delivered them from their distress. He made the storm be still, and the waves of the sea were hushed. Then they were glad that the waters were quiet, and he brought them to their desired haven. Possibly why they say, who then is this, that even the wind and the sea obey him? It is possible that they have caught this drosh moment as their rabbi, Jesus, the Son of Man, exercises power over the wind and the sea, Baal and Yam. But the story doesn't stop there, because there is still work to be done, and this was all set up to prep them for what's next in Mark 5, verse 1. They came to the other side of the sea, to the country of the Gerasenes, and when Jesus had stepped out of the boat, immediately there met him out of the tombs a man with an unclean spirit. He lived among the tombs, and no one could bind him anymore, not even with a chain, for he had often been bound with shackles and chains, but he wrenched the chains apart, and he broke the shackles in pieces. No one had the strength to subdue him. Night and day among the tombs and on the mountains, he was crying out and cutting himself with stones. The punches just keep coming for the disciples. Just keep coming. Can you imagine? Like, they just survived, quite possibly, the scariest thing they've ever been through in their life. 100, someone walked away from that scenario with some kind of trauma, and the first thing they meet is a demon-possessed guy that you find out later is naked. Completely in the buff. Jesus, this is why we don't come here. They're all naked. They're all crazy. That's why we live over there. Can we walk back now, please? Man, this is a lot for me today, Jesus. But let's look at it from the demoniac's perspective, because the demoniac's kicking it in the tomb right now. That's where he lives. And all of a sudden, this great storm breaks out over the Galilee. All right. Not like super crazy, not super common, but like, all right, no big deal. But in the midst of a tempest, it just gone. That's really not normal. That's like maybe I should go check out what's happening at the Galilee, because I don't know what that was. But I'm a little curious. And so he starts headed down to the Galilee, and who does he meet? Well, this demon-possessed man meets God. I love how Podcast Rabbi puts it. He says, nobody wants anything to do with this guy. Can't be bound, danger to himself, everyone, everything, forced to live in the tombs. And yet, here comes this tasseled rabbi. Verse 6, and when he saw Jesus from afar, he ran and fell down before him, and crying out with a loud voice, he said, what have you to do with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? I adjure you, by God, do not torment me. This demon didn't even, like running wasn't an option for him. Like, when you see something terrifying, your first instinct is to what? Like, some people freeze. What is the other ones? Flight. That's the one I don't have. Fight. That's the one I have. Jody says I have a fight or fight mechanism. I get scared and I charge. I don't know why. All my kids do too. Maybe this guy did as well, because the first thing he did wasn't to run away, was to go towards. The demon thinks this is it. The day's come. This is the final day. Jesus has come to throw me into the lake of fire. He's losing it. Verse 8, for he was saying to him, come out of the man, you unclean spirit. And Jesus asked him, what is your name? He replied, my name is Legion, for we are many. And he begged him earnestly not to send them out of the country. Now a great herd of pigs was feeding there on the hillside. And they begged him, saying, send us to the pigs, let us enter them. So he gave them permission. And the unclean spirits came out and entered the pigs, and the herd, numbering over 2,000, rushed down the steep bank into the sea and drowned in the sea. The herdsmen fled and told it to the city in the country. And people came to see what it was that had happened. And they came to Jesus and saw the demon-possessed man, the one who had the legion, sitting there, clothed and in his right mind, what had happened to the demon-possessed man and to the pigs. And they began to beg Jesus to depart from their region. 2,000 pigs? 2,000 pigs? That's a major dent in the economy. Okay? That's a lot of bacon, man. Which I know Jesus doesn't care about because he's Jewish, but that's a lot of bacon, man. pigs can get big. And how do they respond? How do the people respond? The people being the image bearers of God, they beg him to leave. Because just like today, back then, the world didn't like or deal well with the kingdom of God. When the kingdom of heaven showed up, it messes with our way of life. It messes with our systems. It turns everything upside down. We no longer know our place in empire, and that makes us uncomfortable, and heaven forbid if we feel uncomfortable. But the best part's yet to come. As he, Jesus, was getting into the boat, the man who had been possessed with demons begged him that he might be with him. And he, this is Jesus, did not permit him, but said to him, "Go home to your friends and tell them how much the Lord has done for you and how he has had mercy on you." And he went away and began to proclaim in the Decapolis how much Jesus had done for him, and everyone marveled. If there was ever a Gentile to be brought into the Havarah, it was the demoniac. It just makes sense, and yet Jesus says no. I love how the NIV puts this. Go home to your own people and tell them how much the Lord has done for you and how much he has had mercy on you. Jesus sends him, one of the first Gentile missionaries, the demoniac, no degree, no theological training, not even a Sunday school class, nothing but his story. And yet, that was enough. Now, at face value, that seems to end there. That's it. We never know his name. He's never mentioned again. But the next time Jesus goes to the Decapolis, he is greeted by 4,000. Apparently, all the demoniac needed was his story. Eventually, in that area, it becomes Christianized in history. A lot of churches are found there. Some are still being found today. But there's one of note. The Cathedral of Hippos, the bishop of whom is either, depending on tradition, the man who penned or one of the men who penned the Nicene Creed. Not the content, but the actual writing. The Nicene Creed being the first creed to define the faith, one of the most important church documents and one of the most foundational creeds in Christianity. One man, one insignificant person that history doesn't even remember, and yet the world is changed because he shared his story. Are you ready? Are we ready to go to the world and share our story? Or are we too busy hiding our light, hiding our story under a basket? Because it's easier here. It's more comfortable here in our hiding. Here we don't stand out. Here under the basket, I fit in. I know my place here. Your story, our stories matter. It's not about how perfect they are or how dialed you are telling them. It doesn't matter if you were a disciple with the most basic upbringing on a sinking boat or a demon-possessed man living in the tombs. It doesn't matter if you were born in the pews here at church and you spent your entire life being a Christian, worshiping the one true God. It also doesn't matter if you grew up in the ghetto where drugs are rampant and the lifestyle is everything but God. It does not matter what you think of your story. It matters how God can use your story. God is ready to use your story to impact his kingdom, to bring heaven to earth. All we have to do is share it. Share it. Share it and watch the Spirit move through your narrative. Share it and watch as people come to know him because he moved through your lives, through our lives. Maybe we here at EagleNaz are only one story away from 4,000. Maybe we are only one story away from even greater things than these. Truly, truly, I tell you, whoever believes in me will do the works I have been doing, and they will do even greater things than these because I am going to the Father. Are we ready? Because your story has the power to change history, to bring forth miracles, and to turn graveyards into cathedrals.
Amen. Hey now, let's rise and worship.